The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Robert Tan. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares are mixed after Wall Street's rally stalled as investors appeared not to react much to the results of the latest round of China-US trade talks. U.S. President Donald Trump says that China will supply rare earth minerals and magnets to the U.S., while his government will allow Chinese students into U.S. universities in a deal that still needs an agreement by him and China's leader. Trump gives an assurance that he is going to work closely together with President Xi Jinping to open up China to American trade, which he describes as a great win for both countries. Japan's Nikkei 225 led the losses, falling by 0.64%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also declined by 0.50%. On the other hand, South Korea's Kospi posted a solid gain of 0.69%. China's Shanghai Composite saw a slight uptick of nearly 0.1%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index edged higher by 0.11%. Meanwhile, Australia's ASX 200 is flat with a downward bias. In the currency markets, the US dollar fell 0.42% against the Japanese yen and slipped 0.62% versus the South Korean won. It also dropped 0.43% against the Thai baht. Modest declines were recorded against the Singapore dollar and the Australian dollar, down 0.22% and nearly 0.1% respectively. Meanwhile, the dollar is flat with a downward bias against the Hong Kong dollar. Gold prices climbed more than 1%. In the oil market, West Texas Intermediate crude dipped by 0.37%, while Brent crude declined by 0.44%. In contrast, Dubai crude surged by nearly 3%. Meanwhile, the cryptocurrency space was under pressure, with Bitcoin falling more than 1% and Ethereum dropping more than 2%. After 4 years of heightened monitoring, the Philippines is finally clean and out of the global dirty money watch list. Our reporter Sujin Kim with the details. Go ahead, Sujin.
The Philippines is officially out of the European Commission's dirty money watch list. The EU's executive body confirmed that the country is no longer considered a high-risk jurisdiction for money laundering and financial crimes, citing significant progress in strengthening its legal and regulatory framework. The EU said the update reflects alignment with the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force, the global standard-setting body for anti-money laundering. The delisting is seen as a strong signal to the global market and is expected to deliver immediate gains to key sectors, leading the beneficiaries, the Philippine banking industry. Industry analysts say this will improve coordination between local banks and European counterparts and help unlock funding and investment flows previously constrained by regulatory red flags. Another winner, the Philippines' vast remittance network.
The Philippines is being one of the top global remittance recipients in the world, and this move will actually help preserve and improve banking corridors between the EU and the Philippines, ensuring that our OFW sending money from Europe do not really face disruptions, delays, or even increased transaction costs.
Also expected to benefit fintech companies including e-wallets, digital lenders, and payment platforms, which have struggled with heightened due diligence from international partners. Amid the celebration, the Securities and Exchange Commission vowed to sustain momentum in cracking down on illicit financial activities.
I will leave no stone unturned for SEC to contribute what it should be contributing towards on the AMLAC our program. Ganun lang naman yun. Everybody should do its job. As simple as that.
The newly minted SEC chief also called for stronger enforcement under his leadership.
Enforcement should be the key rather than exemption from enforcement. For example, there are these exemptive reliefs from SEC rules. While the SEC has the power to grant exemptive relief, meaning to say exempt from the complying with the provisions, for me, the exemptive relief will be really the exception rather than the rule. It will be far in between.
Bangko Sentral Governor Eli Remolona Jr. welcomed the EU's decision but noted that it still requires a final yes from the European Parliament. Still, economists warn that the country must remain vigilant as new threats could put it back on the watch list.
Well, relisting is always possible because of the evolving landscape of the financial market. Second, triggers could be POGO migrations or even the resurgence of POGO. There might be a regulatory loophole or return of illegal operators, especially those involved in illegal operations, money laundering, which can trigger or raise red flags among EU regulators.
Rivera added that the rise of AI-driven fraud and unmonitored crypto platforms could pose fresh compliance risks if not immediately addressed. Sujin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Thank you for that report, Sujin Kim. Meanwhile, despite uncertainty from Trump administration's tariff policies, the World Bank has kept its economic growth forecast for the Philippines. The World Bank's biannual Global Economic Prospects report stated the Philippine gross domestic product is expected to expand by 5.3% this year, 5.4% in 2026, and 5.5% in 2027. These figures were unchanged from the bank's East Asia and Pacific report released in April. World Bank's forecasts were below the government's GDP target range of 6 to 8% up to 2028. For 2026, the Philippines will be the second fastest in the region after Vietnam's 6.1%. The World Bank ends a decade-long freeze on funding nuclear energy in developing nations. WB President Ajay Banga says electricity demand in developing nations is set to be more than double by 2035, needing over $560 billion in annual investments in generation, grids, and storage. While natural gas remains under debate, nuclear got swift board approval. The U.S., holding nearly 16% of voting power, has long pushed for this pivot. The bank vows to work with International Atomic Energy Agency and fast-track small modular reactors to strengthen energy security. With higher demand for vegetable oil in the global market, the Philippines' export earnings from coconut oil export is expected to breach the $2.2 billion it registered last year, according to the Philippine Coconut Authority. Last May, the price of coconut oil breached north of $2,700 per metric ton, according to the World Bank. The predicted increase is 88% higher than the $1.18 billion coconut oil export sale in 2023. U.S. President Donald Trump is not willing to extend a July 8 deadline for concluding trade negotiations before new U.S. tariffs take effect. Speaking to reporters at the Kennedy Center for a performance of Les Miserables, Trump says he does not believe that the deadline will be extended, citing progress in talks with countries including Japan, South Korea, and the European Union. He also notes that letters outlining new trade terms will be sent to dozens of others within 2 weeks.
We made a great deal with China. We're very happy with it. We have everything we need, and we're going to do very well with it, and hopefully they are too.
Trump, meanwhile, says that the protest in Los Angeles is caused by gross incompetence, arguing that the place have no police to handle the situation.
The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in, the National Guard went in and got them. The police weren't able, unfortunately, to move fast enough, but we moved fast enough. And while we were there, we stayed there, and we stopped tremendous destruction and death.
U.S. President Donald Trump will sign 3 resolutions Thursday to overturn California's electric vehicle and diesel ending mandates, a move cheered by automakers and fossil fuel lobbyists. The rules Trump is repealing cover a third of the U.S. auto market. They would have required 80% EV sales by 2035 and stricter emissions limits on trucks and off-road engines. The American Petroleum Institute and car makers like General Motors and Toyota call it a win for consumers' choice and energy security. Environmental groups disagree. California vows to challenge the rollback in court, citing $45 billion in potential healthcare costs. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources has green-lighted the Semirara Mining and Power Corporation, or SNPC, to proceed with its nearly 300 billion pesos coal mine expansion in Antique. This comes after the company has secured an amended environmental compliance certificate clearance from the agency for Semirara coal mine complex. In a regulatory filing, SNPC says that the amendment allows it to expand its project area to over 5,000 hectares from 4,000 hectares under Coal Operating Contract Number 5 granted by the Department of Energy, or DOE. The company explains that this will allow it to sustain operations by including the Acacia mine alongside the currently operating Nara mine. It also raises the annual production limit to 20 million metric tons of coal from 16 million metric tons using the open pit mining method from 2025 to 2027. We're taking a short break. More business stories from around the country and the world are up next. You're watching Business Brief. Starting July 1, Kuwait will require foreigners working in the private sector to obtain their employer's permission before leaving the country under the kafala sponsorship system that ties migrant workers' visas to their employers, oftentimes preventing them from changing jobs and leaving the country. The procedure, which can be done online, aims to strengthen oversight of the movement of expatriate workers and ensure a balance between the workers' and employers' rights, the statement added. Saudi Arabia has similar restrictions on expatriate workers who are required to obtain exit and re-entry permits from their sponsor to leave and re-enter the country. Qatar began allowing most foreign workers to leave the country without their employers' authorization, the same policy adopted by the United Arab Emirates. Half of Kuwait's 4 million population are expats. North of 100,000 are Filipino workers. The economic team of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. warns that the proposed across-the-board wage hike will threaten the country's fragile recovery. In a joint position paper submitted to Marcos, they say that it may weigh on growth, stroke inflation, and wipe out as many as 300,000 jobs. They estimate that a 200 peso wage hike increase could reduce gross domestic product growth by as much as 1.6%, while a 100 peso increase may cut growth by 0.5%. Meanwhile, labor leader Joshua Mata blasted President Bongbong Marcos for allegedly buying into big business fears about inflation and job losses should the wage hike bill be passed into law. In an interview on the Bilyonaryo News Channel's Business 360, Mata claimed that those fears are myths debunked time and again. He said they have presented their own study showing that a wage increase may actually even lead to more jobs.
Yeah. So enough of this bullshit about their fear-mongering of inflation, of companies closing. Enough of that. This is not about numbers anymore. This is about the moral stance of a president who has never, ever been poor.
While declaring distrust towards lawmakers, the labor group promises to bring a much stronger base of organized workers this time around as they push for the wage hike in the 20th Congress. To recall, the push to raise workers' minimum wage has hit a wall after the 19th Congress failed to ratify a final bill before adjourning. The House wanted a 200 peso daily increase, while the Senate proposed just half of that, but both sides never reached a compromise. 6 months, that's the deadline President Marcos gave the Villar-owned Siquijor Island Power Cooperative, or SIPCOR, to fix daily power outages, taking its toll on lives, businesses, and the tourism in the province. Siquijor needs 10.5 megawatts, but only 8.8 are contracted. This has sparked load shedding since June 1. Now, under a year-long state of calamity, Siquijor relies on 2 generator sets from Palawan, a band-aid, while long-term solutions remain unclear. Tourism was driving growth in Siquijor, up 6.2% post-pandemic until SIPCOR's 3 generating units broke down.
We have given ourselves a deadline of 6 months for this short-term solution. By 6 months from now, we will then impose whatever new arrangements that we have to do so that 6 months from now, we do not have to resort to emergency gensets. SIPCOR has to live up to its commitments.
Dubbed as a model for future rail projects, the long-delayed MRT-7 might just arrive on time. Now over 83% complete, the 2027 roll-off targeted by the Department of Transportation will hopefully happen before President Marcos' terms end. The MRT-7 project aims to ease traffic and cut travel time between Quezon City and Bulacan, benefiting up to 600,000 passengers daily. Transport Secretary Vince Dizon stressed the need to finish the common station to seamlessly connect MRT-7 with MRT-3 and LRT-1. Newly appointed Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Francis Lim wants more government-owned and controlled corporations, or GOCCs, to list on the Philippine Stocks Exchange Index. This is part of efforts to expand capital markets and boost investor participation. Lim is evaluating GOCCs that can be encouraged to list on the local stock barometer. He is also looking into private companies that receive government incentives on the condition they will go public, an obligation that, according to him, is largely gone unmet. Hotel 101 Global is set to make history this month as the first Filipino-owned firm to be listed and traded on tech-heavy Nasdaq in New York. The company's listing ceremony will be held on June 27 with an equity value of $2.3 million. The listing ceremony will be live-streamed in Nasdaq's website. Hotel 101 Global is a subsidiary of Double Dragon Corporation. Meanwhile, Google has offered buyouts to another swath of its workforce across several key divisions. This is amid artificial intelligence-driven tech upheaval and antitrust uncertainty. The company confirms the streamlining that was reported by several news outlets, but it is not clear how many employees are affected. But the offers were made to staffs in Google search, advertising, research, and engineering units. The Mountain View, California company employs most of the nearly 186,000 workers on worldwide payroll of its parent company, Alphabet Incorporated. Nvidia teams up with French artificial intelligence startup Mistral to build a European cloud platform powered by 18,000 top-tier Nvidia chips. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says Europe's AI computing power will grow tenfold in 2 years. At VivaTech Paris, Huang unveiled plans for the first industrial AI cloud in Germany, new tech centers in 7 countries, and localized AI via Perplexity to serve regional languages and cultures.
You should do everything in your power to try to advance AI here. Of course, there's nothing wrong with still using public AIs and cloud AIs and such, but you cannot afford to outsource all of it, especially because you have incredible talent here. France, as you and I were having the great conversation about, deep science, deep engineering, deep mathematics.
President Emmanuel Macron touting Paris' 5.3-fold startup value growth since 2017 and cites the new industrial capacity's role in France's technological independence.
It's because we have Mistral, AI startup, and we have a stream of significant players from Lion. We managed to uplift the country today as a leader in data centers and what we call AI factories, meaning the computing capacities which are to be created, because in fact they have a market here. It's because we're doing that we managed to scale up and finalize operations, and also assemble, as well as design semiconductors which are necessary for these factories. And all of this creates a lot of value, and that's what creates independence.
President Macron also urges the European Union to formulate social media rules for children under 15 years old, linking online exposure to youth violence and declining skills. Ateneo de Manila study flags a painful paradox. Nursing and medicine graduates face unstable job prospects despite an over 127,000 public sector nurse gap. There are also just 8 doctors per 10,000 Filipinos in government facilities. Hiring is choked by budget caps in the local government unit level, while training stays hospital-focused, leaving fresh grads unprepared for public health roles. Clinics spend 50,000 pesos on training new hires and get only 2,000 pesos back from the government. Even top MDs feel untrained for rural posts. Government is urged to fix the pipeline and stop the talent bleed to greener pastures abroad. The Regional Development Council passes a resolution requesting the Office of the President to release the 1.2 billion pesos in funds for the rehabilitation of San Juanico Bridge this year. Edgar Tabacon, Department of Public Works and Highways Regional Director and RDC Infrastructure Committee Chair, says that the resolution was handed to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. during his recent visit to the San Juanico Bridge. The funds aim to strengthen and restore the San Juanico Bridge to its 33-ton load capacity. The Philippines has resumed poultry imports from Belgium after the avian flu outbreak was declared over. Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel cited Belgium's compliance with global health standards and 0 cases since February 28. The move restores a key European supply source, boosting food security and agri-sector growth. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert Tan. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business, only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.